A lot has happened in Brisbane over the last 50 years. From hosting major events such as the Commonwealth Games, World Expo, and G20 summits, to multiple once in a lifetime floods, the construction of the Gateway Bridge, and so much more. But one thing has stayed consistent throughout those 50 years in Brisbane. In December 1975, a small radio station aiming to provide an alternative to the mainstream made its debut on Brisbane airwaves. That radio station was 4ZZZ. Hailing out of the grounds of the University of Queensland, they have seen their share of transmission locations. From the clubs and societies offices at University of Queensland, to the cellar, to a van on Mount Cootha, and finally setting up shop on Barry Parade in Fortitude Valley. On the eve of their 50th anniversary, let's take a look at the station's history with both people that have worked at 4ZZZ, plus bands that have been shaped by its legacy.
It was probably, being interested in music as
Mhm.
a, late teen, living down in Logan, starting going to uni around the city and being interested in music, hearing about gigs, starting to seeing 4ZZZ around, started
Yep,
making a connection between those gigs and the station,
yep,
um, seeing the car park shows and things like that. Uh, and then listening just on and off, not too much. But
hmm
then when an internship popped up through the university to do
yep,
a news internship at the station, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they're cool. I know what they're like. I know that they're into cool music. Let's
yep.
go have a go and check it out. And yeah, that was it.
Yep.
Well, look, the first time I can remember is when they had the studios at Toowong, which
Yep.
must have been pretty early 90s, maybe 92, something like
Mhm.
that. And we went in one night to do a live to air, a
Yep.
gig in the studio. And we had our own sound engineer with us and we set
Yep.
up our amps, crazy loud back then, as we all were.
Yep.
And I'm sure it sounded terrible. We all had beers.
hmm
Like we did all the time in those early days, we
hmm
treated everything with as little professionalism as we possibly
Yep.
could. But I hadn't heard that recording in forever. Like I don't really remember it, but I remember it happening, and I remember it just being super cruisy. And
hmm
we went out live to air, and it was yeah, flying by the seat of your pants and real live radio.
I actually made a new friend in the local music scene at an event that we volunteered for. And he was like, "Oh, I volunteer at 4ZZZ." And I was like, "Oh my God, I love that radio station." And he told me how to get in touch. So I reached out to the volunteer coordinator at Z at the time, and they had me in the following week and went through an induction, and it was super easy. Introduced me to some people, got a feel of what I wanted to do there or what I was interested in, and they just introduced me to the right people that was like owning those departments within Z. And that's kind of how I stuck there.
I was being interviewed on the station. There was a station manager at the time around 2010-ish to 2014, Michelle Padovan, known as Mickey in the
Yep. I know
station,
Nikki.
and alongside Michelle Padovan, Michelle Brown, who were the two station managers. Well,
hmm
Michelle encouraged me, you should get involved. And I was sold on the idea as a musician in the community and the value of 4ZZZ.
Yep.
Whenever I've spoken at different like little industry events, whether they're small or big, I would say that Triple Z and the radio is one part of that ecosystem.
hmm
The next is kind of the media and community media such as yourself. But
Yep.
back in the day, there was also street press.
Yep.
And there was around 2010, there was still you had Time Off, uh, which you had Rave magazine, you had
hmm
Scene Star. You still have Scene Star now, but it's not. You don't have that weekly diet
Yep.
and that weekly gig guide you used to have. And the radio was kind of, I felt, was part of that virtuous triangle
Yep.
uh, of artists, artists and venues and street press radio. I think we really miss street press, and I
Hmm.
think radio has had to pick up the slack more since then.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, I got involved because I saw that it was is a vital part of being in the local music scene.
Probably would have been live to air when it was at St. Lucia.
Yeah.
And I can just remember, I think it was in the winter because I remember wearing a jumper or it being cold in there or something. But I remember that was the first time um, I actually played on the radio or had any sort of song on the radio. Triple Z was allowing bands to
Yep.
play live, which was, I mean, it's pretty incredible for a local,
Yeah.
to go on the radio station. Yeah, it was great.
Actually,
Joined the news internship because I thought
mhm.
it was a cool opportunity.
Yep.
Thought it was a cool place, and pretty much as immediately after arriving, was like, "This is the coolest place ever. It's
Yep.
what I want to be a part of." Got to do the interview and the induction, and just thought it was so brilliant. And yeah, I remember my first day as an intern.
Yep.
Knocking at the back door at 6:50 on a Friday morning, and
Yep.
someone opens the door and they're like, "Oh, hey man, you here for the Z-Lines band?" And
Yep.
playing punk music the whole time, and then
Yep.
gets on his motorbike at the end and says, "See you later," and drives off. And it's
Yep.
Robin Anderson from This, who's still on today, and
Yep.
I was like, "You're the coolest dude that's ever existed." So actually, this is where I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
be. And yeah,
Yeah.
been
You
here
would
ever
have got your introduction with Brown Couch on a Friday morning or something similar.
At this time it was this with
Yeah.
Robert Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was
That's
an
amazing.
introduction. Yeah.
That's an amazing trial by fire almost.
Oh, 100%. But it was just immediately, it's not going to get better than this. This is
Yeah.
the coolest. I
Mm.
mean, there's so many, um, commercial radio stations that have such a narrow focus on what they play musically. Then
Mm.
you've got other stations that have their niches, but because of that, they don't expand further out from that. Where we know that there's great music happening across all generations, across all different communities. So how does that? It really fits our remit to be a place where other music doesn't get an opportunity.
I feel like it's a fire that was lit in 1975 by some really committed people who really felt the need for a different media source of news reporting, news that wasn't being covered already by the Courier Mail or the commercial networks or the Sun at the time, the Daily Sun. And so there was a great need from the people that started Triple Z for representing media that was representative of stuff that was actually happening in the community.
Yeah.
And not just because it came like the Springbok protest back in the early 70s really amplified that feeling where there were a lot of these supporters were whacked, beaten down with batons from police that were trucked in from all over the state for this Springbok protest. And then there was virtually no coverage of it.
Yeah.
That was the planted a seed in many of the people who were at that event.
Yeah.
Triple Z was almost like a second home way back in the day. I had a friend, two friends who both had a show, and they did a joint show where like a graveyard shift. I don't know how many people used to listen to it, but like I remember I actually got kicked off air one time because they left to go do something, and they said like, you know how to work all the stuff, like just keep it rolling until we get back. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday or something. But then for some reason, the station manager just rolled in to do some stuff. And he was like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, who are you?" Because I didn't know who he was, Yeah, and he kicked me off the air and yeah, dead air. But anyway, like, yeah, that's where everything kind of gets its first start. Like, so every time, the song Every Time was from a previous band, that previous band that I mentioned before that songs got dragged over from, but it was like it was mostly the same lyrics, but it had this like different guitar riff, and I played the guitar live under it. It was vibe-wise way different, but lyrically exactly the same. And that I remember we submitted that to Triple Z, and we made a handmade booklet that I drew, and there was like a whole story, like you fold it out and it's a poster and it's a story about all the bad stuff that happens like to the person in the song. And yeah, so that was the first place we ever got played. So Triple Z, obviously the first supporters that we ever had.
For whatever practice that they have in. So I think then having that community engagement of, volunteers, announcers, everyone here, that does also then expand your remit, because someone who's in a community that might be seeing those bands, someone else be on the different end of the day listening to a completely different other band in a completely different other scene, still having representation on the station. So it's definitely something that's thought of to be, how are we best addressing all communities and all demographics. And I think it works both ways. New music is new music, regardless. Whether it be a band's first demo that they've recorded out of high school, or whether it's a group of friends that have gotten back, jamming in their late 40s and they're wanting to put stuff out.
Yeah,
new music, and it does have its home somewhere across the programming.
It's all there is, really. It's the best thing. It's like, I mean, I grew up in Perth. I was born in the north of WA, then I grew up in Perth, and then for the most part, and then when we started playing music there, they had the community station there, and it was it was really good. I heard a lot of cool stuff. I heard stuff like Betty Davis and stuff on it for the first time. And, in that sense, it was really good. But then when it came time for them to play new local music, they were quite cliquey.
Yeah, right.
And so we didn't get a great deal of love from them. It was really hard and frustrating. And but then we moved to Melbourne.
Yep.
But the minute we got to Melbourne, we just sent CDs to PBS and Triple R, and they just flogged them. And then we could fill rooms and stuff. So, Melbourne were more open to crazy shit because they've had a history of, great bands that are unpalatable, Yeah,
I was going to say inaccessible for the general population. Yeah.
They're really so that, that I went from sort of resenting public radio to being in Melbourne and it's going, wow, this is actually it's what makes everything perfect.
I truly think that the bigger Full Flower Moon Band has gotten, the more obvious the power of community radio has become. Because even when we were charting with our album on the ARIA charts, like the airplay we experienced from 4ZZZ in our hometown and other community radio stations was actually still so powerful in really getting the album out there. Like album of the week and having high rotation on 4ZZZ, it's super powerful. And like, I don't think I understood the gravity of that until we'd actually kind of broken through into a bigger, like, we might have been getting played on more commercial stations. But like the heavy lifting is like so community based, and I still think it's the answer to like longevity in this industry is staying connected to your local radio station.
For 50 years, like that has been the case, and that's why it's nearly hurts to think about, over the period of time, just how many people have volunteered here. The fact that a 24-hour radio station is going from majority volunteer effort and work is remarkable.
I used to like co-host a show with a friend, like a graveyard shift on Wednesday nights. You'd go get a $2 Fat Boys steak, and then you would go, host a midnight show at 4ZZZ. And it was just always nice bumping into people there, talking to people who were once again like in the community, in Brisbane's like really unique, small, tight vibe. And, the ideas you would get from people at 4ZZZ has always influenced us as how we should approach not just like music, but even, you know, how you should approach like being a human in a lot of ways, like just the respect that they have for everyone, for all diversities, and you know what I mean. It's just always been something that's helped us to, you know what I mean, put our music out there, but also to teach us about, you know what I mean, how to treat one another, which is you know, the heart of 4ZZZ in my opinion.
What's kept it alive is essentially all these different types of people that have a different view of 4ZZZ to me.
Yeah.
And it's continually amazing. And when I depart the scene, there'll be hopefully future custodians which will keep that fire going and which will have just as much passion to keep the station going as I have and people around me at present.
Yeah.
What I think it's done is to, especially when you think back to the 90s and how Triple J was so everywhere,
Yeah.
it was this always reminder to keep it local, keep it community based, keep it about the music, keep it about no bullshit or hype or any of that side of things. And it was always this sort of thing that would sort of bring you back to ground a little, you know what I mean? Not that everybody needed it, but it was just like, you know, you come home to Brisbane after going on tour and it's Triple Z and it's kind of like, okay, music's just for music. People are the people who like music are genuine. They passionately care about it. They will listen to it wherever they can. This radio station will support you, and they're about nothing apart from local community and local music. So it was just this. It was just a kind of like a big warm hug.
I think it's a codependent relationship. I mean, that's the thing. You are responsible to the community, and the community lets you know it. So you get that support from community. I mean, currently, you know, we are predominantly funded by subscribers. It's through people giving their money to the station to keep the lights on because they believe in what we do and they enjoy what we do. And I think that's what keeps you independent as well, because you are responsible to the people who are saying, this is what's happening that you're doing, this is what we like.
Everything to us. We don't get played on other radio stations at all. I actually spent quite a lot of time in Brisbane. I was there for 5 years for university and a little bit after. So 4ZZZ was a really big part of my life when I was there, and I was playing the indie bands and they were playing that as well. Playing all those bands when we were sort of coming up. And yeah, now, like I think last year, our album managed 8 album of the week on community radio, including 4ZZZ. And that had a huge impact on how the album went, because people really believe in community radio. Like, if you listen to it, you listen to it because you believe in the programming and you believe that they're offering something that other radio stations aren't, which is like obvious if you look at their playlisting. Like, look at a Hot 100 Triple Z list now, and you see like a lot of what used to be on the Hottest 100. You know, like they're the rock bands from the suburbs, and they're bands that we used to really champion in Australia that kind of get left behind now. And I think that the more of us that listen to community radio, the healthier the music scene will be.
Keep that up, but also to keep those morals and values and things that are important to the station that have been for 5 decades. And staying true to that is being responsible to the community, while also, you know, sometimes we do introduce new things and we do push things. We have things that we want to do and they happen. But it is generally, that's how I think you do stay independent, is because the community supports that and they want that.
But when you're a bunch of weirdos and you sound like a bunch of weirdos, you don't get any love. So without public radio, it's just it'd be absolutely, we wouldn't be able to do anything.
I think it's going to be used as a reference point for more commercially driven and mainstream enterprises, because these institutions like 4ZZZ have survived so much, and the music industry is changing rapidly every year and has been for a while now, and yet I think we will look at stations like 4ZZZ and say, hang on, okay, how did they do it and maintain like their listenership and their relevance and, you know, on like less budgets than what the mainstream media has? And how did they do it so well? And how did they understand people? Because the 4ZZZ does understand its audience and does a great job at catering to it and sets the tone for things as well, like a tastemaker of the local scene. And I know that at the moment, like there's petitions going around for commercial stations to change their quotas on how many Australian artists they're asked to play and at what times. And like artists and music bodies are demanding that mainstream radio stations like really step up their game on how they represent our own community of musicians. And I think you just have to look at community radio and it's like they've done it. They've done it for like many, many, many years.
So we created the Z Digital Band, which is like all these online shows that are on they're on the digital, it's called a DAB. So it's also helped a lot of people who can't come into the studio and record and stuff like that or go live to air. They can pre-record their shows and have that out. We also have a volunteer helping out shows that want to do a podcast and stuff like that and help make sure it's still sticking within the community guidelines, but also still getting that edge on how encapsulating what podcasts are really doing, because they really thrive at this point in time with new age media. And we have like a dedicated community engagement coordinator who focuses on a lot of social media stuff. And there's just a lot of people that work behind the scenes to try and come up with new ideas and really keep 4ZZZ in people's like ears, basically. So we have like a TikTok up and coming now as well. So it's all wild. It's an ever-growing landscape.
It pretty much the great thing about it is a lot of things change. You know, street press changes.
Yep.
It's not really street press now. It's a lot more internet driven. But the thing that's great about Triple Z is it's still kind of delivering the same sort of platform it did for me when I was a kid in the 80s. You know, I mean, they're still like, oh, they'll play your stuff. And oh, my friends can vote for this in the Hot 100. Oh, you know, it's a very much a great support for up and coming kids, and that sort of platform hasn't really changed, and it doesn't look like it's going to. And the great thing about Triple Z is that it's supported by community and looks like it will be around for a while.
Exposed to so much. There's so much that I would have never known or learned about or discovered if not for 4ZZZ about you know certain communities, the histories of Brisbane, and all that kind of different socio-cultural things that have led us to where we are. Without Triple Z, you know, I wouldn't have known. Yeah.
Fitting 12 people into that it's what right here right now at the moment, like the right here right now room. We did a few live delays. We did a few live delays, which I know is not, you know, within the facilities of 4ZZZ, but whenever asked for the opportunity to record one of our live sets for 4ZZZ, we would always jump on it. We were really fortunate as well. It may have been the 40th anniversary, although that maybe the timing's not quite right. But like 4ZZZ put out a brand of Velociraptor playing cards as well. Like they drafted up playing cards for us, and it was something that was being sold by 4ZZZ for a point in time.
Oh yeah, like, you know, you'd get I mean, because it's a community station and I knew people who worked there, the first people to play it were people that I knew. So they let me know that they were going to play it. And so, like, you know, everyone's like crowded around the radio, like somewhere between the next, you know, I don't know, half an hour and 4 hours, somewhere in here, there's going to be our song is going to get played. So everyone just stay tuned. Like, don't turn on TV. Everyone just wait. And then like when it comes on, it's like, yes. So yeah, definitely. Like it's a different world now, but yeah, back
Yeah.
then, yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is real. There's other people. Everybody out there can hear this. Like, whereas now you post on Facebook and everybody out there can see.
Yeah, in Sydney, definitely. And we also struck up some pretty good relationships with some record stores. So there's a record store in Parramatta called Beat Disc, and they have supported us from the absolute get-go, let us play in their store, bought more records from us than any other record store in Australia, like consistently just buying so many from us. And their audience, or their customers, I guess, they come in and buy them, which is awesome. But yeah, we just had to like try and play as much as possible and try and get it in as many stores as possible in Sydney. So you go in and you're like, as a DIY band who's putting their own record out, you go in and you're like, hey, can I leave like 5 records here on consignment, and then hope that you don't forget in 6 months' time to like call them and ask if they've sold them or not.
We've always been involved with the community and the community radio, and 4ZZZ, you know, we would always send in the demo tapes there. When we put out sort of, after we'd sort of constructed our sound, we put out our first EP. After, you know, when we were 12 strong, we spent a bit of time sort of, again, finding that really nice balance between all of us without overcrowding things. And our first sort of single, you know, our first single that we sort of all put together as one collective, we sent that to 4ZZZ, and it started getting a bit of traction, and we were like, oh, this is really cool. Like, we'll put out a video clip for it. 4ZZZ would always have us on for interviews. They'd always be playing it. And sure enough, that year we won, and we came in #1 in the 4ZZZ Hot 100 with Cynthia, and then from there things just like exploded for us. Like we were constantly touring Australia. Like I think we did sort of like a full round trip and like 4 East Coast tours in the space of like 2 years or something. We went overseas, and like legitimately none of that would have been possible if we didn't have 4ZZZ backing us. And you know what I mean, backing us with their hearts. You know what I mean? Like that's the beauty of 4ZZZ and the community radio.
So much from actually sending people out to go review those gigs, having people review like even singles, putting those singles and albums into the music database for our announcers to play. We have quotas as well, where we try to hit, every announcer is to aim to hit about, I think it's about 40-50% local artists on air per episode. And then you've also got the added element of female and gender non-conforming as well. And they really just try to promote what's good and what's nearby, because it's the easiest where the listeners are being as to where they can go out. So we also have like live reads of like what's happening at some local venues, sponsorships with local venues, and it's like a, hey, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back kind of thing. But it's really nice to see. And there's a lot of people who worked at Z or still work at Z that now run some of these venues and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it sounds different. Like when you hear it on like a public broadcast for the first time, it just hits you differently. I don't know how to explain it. Do you make music yourself?
I don't know, but this is so dumb, but like listening to myself in an interview, I think kind of feels the same way. I think my voice and the way I sounds one way, and then I listen to myself when I'm editing and I'm like, oh, I sound like that. So I
Yeah,
kind of understand it a little bit, but I could also imagine too, like you guys would be listening to that stuff through like, you know, decent speakers and stuff like that. That's got to kind of broadcast through radio waves into a device to then obviously play music. So I'd imagine like it'd sound different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I don't actually mean like different, like, oh, like, you know, the hi-hat is so bright. Like I wish I had it was not like that. It's more like how the song affects you, like how the song fits into the world, of, if that makes sense. Like, you know, it's so in your head when you're recording it and writing it and whatever. but then once it's out, it's like you sort of get a really quick sort of glimpse into how other people are perceiving it. Like even if
Right.
there's no one around, like just to know that it's going out over the radio. Like if you're driving in a car and your song comes on the radio for the first time, you do get a really quick like sense of like, ah, like uh, like this really works like on a long drive, or this doesn't feel good at like 9 o'clock in the morning. It's too brash, or you know what I mean? Like it, you get an extra perspective that you didn't have before.
Yeah, for sure.
Having an artist, and I think that's such a thing of community radio, which sets it apart.
Mm.
Hearing an artist and being like, "What is that? I need to find out immediately." Listening to it, being like, "That is fantastic. I love that."
Yeah.
Couple of weeks later, they come in. Oh, we've got this album coming out. Oh, brilliant, cool. I want to go listen to that. Couple of weeks later, they might be on with someone else. Being like, oh, we're doing a launch show. You go to that show. You see that band.
Yeah.
I think once you go through, that journey of discovering, getting involved, and then seeing, I think you become a fan for life, and I don't think you ever forget that.
Yeah.
There's times where I've heard something on Triple Z that have then gone to be, big parts of my life, or a massive part that you just can't forget.
This is even long before, even Triple J went national or whatever. And it was like the only way you could kind of get your music out there was to, send your demo tape in to Triple Z, and they would support you and they would play you. And Brisbane at the time, late 80s, very early 90s, there wasn't really, no one was getting signed. If you wanted to have a career in music, you'd have to go to Sydney or Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
So within our little scene in Brisbane, Triple Z was the kind of thing that nurtured you and sort of supported you and would play your stuff.
Yeah. So,
and obviously, there was Triple Z Market Day as well, which was kind of like our own little festival sort of thing, where wow, there's like a bigger crowd than playing like the Treasury or the Orient or something like that.
Yeah.
You turn up in this cool park and people are drinking VBs and like
people getting a bit wild.
Getting wild, but it was kind of like a real great happening at the time. Yeah.
If we hadn't have won that year with Cynthia, that first single that we sort of put out once we'd really honed who we were, we just wouldn't have got much traction. We wouldn't have, we wouldn't have been exposed to as many people in the Brisbane community. And, potentially if we still didn't have your support now, again, I just don't think it would be a journey that would have lasted as long as it has lasted for us.
It's sort of like undescribable, like going from playing to like, 700 people as an absolute maximum in Australia to like 3,500 people in Berlin with Emma and the Sniffers. It's really generous of bands to give support slots to bands that they love and not to bands that everyone in the industry thinks that they should put on. And I think it says a lot about the character of bands like Emma and the Sniffers and Regurgitator and Tropical Fuckstorm. Those are the three that really stick out for me, who've really championed our music. But it feels amazing. Like, it's more people than we ever thought we would play in front of. And to then have the crowds be so warm and so supportive and really get on board, like, it's just, you can't describe it. It's such a great feeling.
First time we went to Brisbane, we went to Triple Z, like straight away. It was like, wow, same thing, same attitude as the Melbourne station. It's like, it was just like, come on for an interview, come and we'll play your music. And it was like, wow, okay. Like, so I was always, pleasantly surprised that they were letting us in. And ever since then, it's been the same. And that was like, I'm talking about 2001 or something, like when we first went to Brizzy. But so it's like, you can't understate how important it is.
One of the biggest things would be when they had to start working out of a van. Back in the early days when they were kicked out of the building and stuff like that. That's definitely a very big defining moment. And owning the building as well was a big defining moment. There's been a lot of things. There's the market day.
The best years of my sort of teenage life were going to Triple Z market days, and I feel like they were probably more important than everything else that happened throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
Because you know, you finally see all the people that you've been hearing on the radio. I mean, most of them in Brisbane, but like I started sort of going to those things, when I was still in high school. So, and I finished young. So, like I was 15, 16 when I was like sort of going to gigs and sneaking into stuff. And I mean, like Market Day, I don't think was over 18. I think you could go, like, I think it was all ages.
And I mean, even as of like recently, just the shifts and changes in like either it be managers or it be people within the building and certain shows coming and going. Some shows reaching some big milestones even this year. I think we had a show reach 20, 25 years, which was pretty big. So it's all really big defining things.
We did do a show at the Queensland University swimming pool. I don't remember exactly what it was pertaining to, but it had something to do with Triple Z.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a really hostile reaction from the audience, and a lot of fights broke out.
Oh.
And so we were sort of banned after that. And
Yeah.
I think that sort of lasted for a couple of years. And then sometime, I'd left Brisbane by that stage. And so I wasn't really keeping up with what was sort of going on in local student politics or anything like that. And something changed, and there was a new bunch of people, and the radio station has been incredibly supportive of everything I've been involved in ever since, sort of thing. So that is great. No hard feelings, folks.
Yes, that's it. And they're happy enough to have you along for their birthday celebration. So
yeah. I mean, they probably look the other way or stop talking when I come into the room, but who knows.
You know what? One of the core memories that I have is Quan from Regurgitator's old band were called Zoroaster, and I saw them play, and I don't think I'd heard the name, but I'd not heard the music before, and I'd never seen them play. And they played at the Market Day, and pretty sure he was wearing like a pink, like night, like a slip, like this little dress or whatever. And they had a female. I could be getting confused with the Regurgitator gig there, but whatever. But they had a female lead singer, like shaved head, denim skirt. Like she was just like fully angry, screaming. It's like because Quan wasn't the singer in that band; he was just a guitar player. But yeah, that's a core memory. I was just like, oh my God, like this is blowing my mind because he was doing this thing where like the guitar line had like a 3-chord rundown and we go din and that's like fine. That's not like super tricky or whatever, but he was like doing the volume swell like with his pinky finger on the volume control. So I was like and I was just like, I've never seen anyone do that. That's amazing. Like yeah. So I've looked up to those guys for ages and seen them at Market Day before Regurgitator existed. Yeah, they're the highlights. Pangaea, Zoroaster, and then I saw Regurgitator's first ever gig at Albert Park. It wasn't a Market Day, I don't think, but I think it was put on by Triple Z, another little show in the amphitheater.
I think there's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of accumulative things that have gotten us to where we are today and what we're doing. And I think a lot of that has been, the reframing and the thinking of the station to be like, what is our role now and where is our role going forward? And I think there has been a lot of great work that's been done through, consecutive strategic plans and mining the station's, interests to be like, okay, where are we going forward and how do we sound like that? What are the issues that are important to us today? Kind of that reframing of, we've always been known through our history of the Joe era and everything that went on through those times, the eviction through the 90s. But where are we now? What are the issues that are important to us, and how they're actively looked at, fostered both on an on-air sound and across the station, what we do through great volunteering, and how we appropriately recognize those volunteers, how we create pathways for people to get involved, and actively look in those communities that we know aren't getting media representation or being misled in mainstream media. How do we connect with those places? How do we make sure that they feel that Z is the place for them, for their issues to be heard? And similarly, that goes through all the music, with the changing music industry that we've seen dramatically in the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
What role do we play? How do we focus, and how do we harness that? I think that's what a lot of has been the focus of staff here, all the volunteers, and the planning that has been happening over the last consecutive number of years.
My earliest memory is going over to a barbecue at my parents' house when I lived out in the Bayside out at Cleveland, and a mate of mine who was really like switched on to music, and he would always get the time off or whatever it was in the 80s. And he was like, I remember going, the first time I heard Triple Z, he was like, oh, let's go and listen to this radio station in my parents' car. And I was like, why don't we just listen to it in your room? And he was like, oh, because, it's like a naughty radio station or something. And he's like, they have this radiothon on at the moment where they raise money. And I remember going out into his parents' car and him turning on the radio and listening to it like we're naughty kids.
Yeah.
And going like, what is this music? Like when I was really young, like 12, it was like 82 or something. So I remember listening to it there, just going, oh, wow, this is kind of crazy. Then from there, as you grow up and join bands, then obviously I kind of like, had friends that volunteered there, and they did a live to air with the first band I was in when it was at the St. Lucia campus. So, it was kind of all integrated with the local street press. And, a friend of mine was in a punk band called The Walking Dead, and they played at the Outpost. And then he was like, oh, Triple Z played us. And then here we are in the paper playing at the Outpost this weekend, which I felt was quite amazing growing up living in the suburbs, because I just felt so detached from any kind of sense of cultural cool, because it was like a farmland. And kind of very rural where I kind of grew up. It's not so now, but at the time it was.
Well, it would be the 90s. Just because I think when you're a young music listener, you graduate maybe in your late teens or your early 20s to looking for something different other than the national broadcaster or your commercial networks. And you're looking, if you're really into music and you're looking at like absorbing a lot of music, and you want that music nutrition, for lack of a better word, the natural progression is to community radio, which has niche programming, and it plays music which isn't represented on those other radio stations. And you hopefully find a presenter or announcers that you resonate with, and they can be your musical diet. So I was a person looking for that in the 90s, and I don't think I was a totally active listener then. I was a sporadic listener, and I found certain shows and then they'd disappear. And it was that thing with community radio. I've always found you've kind of got to, shows come and go, and you've got to find something that resonates with you. And that was the case in the 90s. It was kind of a loose affiliation of listenership.
My earliest memory of 4ZZZ was when I went to QT. We got one of my bands I was in uni got invited to be on the radio, and it was this graveyard shift, and we all had to stay up till like 1:30 a.m. or something. And we were so excited that yeah, the whole band stayed up till the wee hours of the morning and went on the radio, which was probably, looking back, like a bit unnecessary. We could have just had one person from the band go in, but it was just so exciting to have our first taste of, I guess, like publicity outside of uni. And that's probably my first memory, is being in the studio in the wee hours of the morning with like all this adrenaline and excitement.
I had someone actually recognize me in public, and I was like, whoa, it was my first time being recognized. Not that that has happened many, but and they're like, oh, you do that right here right now show. And I was like, yeah, yeah. Oh, do you listen in? And they were like, yeah, I listen in every week. And it's so cool to see you reach out and everything and stuff like that. And they mentioned they had a band, and I was like, oh, what's your band? Like, pass me the email, let's arrange something. And we got them in, I think like a month or two later, we had a spot open up, and I was like, hey, I've had a spot open up. Do you want in? And they were like, yep. So we got them on, and they were just so grateful for it. And I was pretty new to the role I had for that radio show. So it meant a lot to me, and they just kind of sung my praises, and then I got a few more opportunities, and it's really benefited me. And then they've gained a bunch of like gigs as well, which was really cool to see. And just kind of like lifting each other up, which was really nice, and I think goes with the ethos of 4ZZZ.
That's a good question. My earliest memory would be when we still lived in Townsville as a band, and we were called the Madmen.
Yep.
And we'd come to Brisbane in my guitarist's van just for a
Yep.
weekend, and we'd play like a couple of parties, maybe a gig at the Outpost, Backstage, these old venues from late 80s, early 90s.
Yep.
And there was always this feeling that you were under the protection of this massive umbrella of Brisbane music, which was Triple Z. And you always felt you entered that when you drove into Brisbane, and you were under it and you were looked after, and it was going to serve you well. And
Yep.
it wasn't like a on the ground presence so much for me, or that was slightly later on. It was just this feeling, and everyone kind of, it brought everyone together.
Yeah, there's just so many examples that all come into mind of like when you're hearing a story or you're hearing someone and you're learning so much, and you're just like, that's amazing, like it's incredible. And whether that be, a Talking Zeds interview where they're talking about some form of history or connection or something that happened through the station's history that they had to go through to get to here, I think that's incredible. Or those big, campaigns that have happened throughout history that you remember so vividly, I mean, in terms of, the Adani coal mine, just the series of interviews that took place over a long time about those issues. I remember just learning so much. Going into I remember recently, last year, the Invasion Day rally and being, there with the announcers with the little, box, and at some point the march had split. Half were going to Musgrave Park, half were going to the Gabba.
Yeah.
The announcers, they're like, what do we do? I'm like, which way do you want to go? It's completely up to you. And we want to go to the Gabba. So we went, and you're walking with the march. They're broadcasting live from there. They're interviewing elders as they walk. And it was just such an incredible thing to be like, where else does this happen? Where else do you get to hear these voices and these stories?
Absolutely nowhere.
I mean, definitely some car park shows. Even like, the dunk tanks at the Hot 100, just great fun, great, tremendous fun.
That year when Cynthia won, I think it got to about 50, and I was like, well, I haven't heard us yet. There's no chance in hell we're going to be in there. You know what I mean? And then sure enough, number one, and it was just such like a thrilling thing. You know what I mean? To be with friends at a party and just be like, holy shit, that's us. Like we did it.
I think it's all down to the volunteers and the people who do keep going, like whether it be every day, it'd be one day a week, or even maybe once a month. And those people that are trying to keep it independent and have that mindset of how they want to stick away from commercialization, and having like the whole like soul and heart within it, and wanting to keep it thriving. And that's quite literally, and all the people that subscribe as well, wanting to keep it going and just chugging away at it and really passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have a range of different ways that people get involved. We have our structured news internships, which is where people come in. We have, we know there's certain people in the community that work in institutions that send for people over for internships, that we have, our music department internship and things like that. We are trying to engage those, connections through those formal settings at institutions. And then there's so much concerted effort into just getting young people in, making sure it's a space where young people feel comfortable, but they also feel represented. And I think that has come from years of work and development, getting good people in, fostering their connection to the station, building pathways, making sure that they can develop, and now at a point where they're hearing young voices on air and being like, oh, that's cool. Like, they sound like me, or I've seen a gig, or things like that. That's a place where I can do this. Having that organic kind of connection flourish, as well as the the more formalized parts, is something that is always being looked at, and even within that, you've got Youth Week, and we're like, okay, what can we do? Can we put on an open day where we go, hey, just it's school holidays, come for a tour of the place. Maybe go to our Youth Week gig that's on the weekend. From that, it's like, all right, we've got some funding through another organization to do a youth announcer training program. So you can just come and do free training. All those little bits of things are aimed at create and foster that community going forward, because Z over 50 years has been an incubator for so many people that come and they've learnt their craft and they've gone off elsewhere. How many people have had a touchstone here over that time? And it's because of things, and I just think it's because that's what 4ZZZ does.
Oh, they play a key role. Because as people get older, you need to bring in fresh blood too, because they are the ones that are constantly on social media. They're the ones that are constantly talking to their friends, going out to gigs, listening to music and everything like that. They are like what keep the music scene alive. And if you don't keep people coming in, you're just going to have people age out, and then it's just kind of going to deflate. So young people play a lot of role, and they come with fresh ideas, and they come with this like buzz and like pure joy in their eyes for like wanting to help out their community. And I think it's really special and valuable. And then to also pair that up with someone who's experienced and maybe older, like the possibilities are endless with what can come out of that.
Seeing all those bands that are important, that have done so much in the history, that still have that love for ZZZ, like the Screen Feeders and Regurgitator, that have been throughout all their start, success, continue their still involvement, and they still believe in what community radio and 4ZZZ does, which is massive.
I would say, like, take a leaf out of Flangipane's book and get involved in the station, because they've won every, or at least in the top 10 Hot 100 for the last 10 years or something. And I really believe it's got to do with the fact that their presence at ZZZ is such a consistent thing. Like, everyone knows who they are, and they're always, there's at least one of them at all times, like hosting a show throughout the week. And so, like, there's so much leverage in doing that. I mean, even if you don't have your own show, just to help out with the station and just get to know the community there, like, that's how you're going to start getting your first bookings, 4ZZZ Car Park is a great place to play. I've played there many a time in Spitfire Lie, which was a punk band I was in a few years ago. And I don't know, it's just a vibe.
Get involved. Ultimately, it sounds like that's the core tenet there. Just get involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like it's like anything, like it's a who you know, not what you know kind of a thing. When it comes to getting supports and stuff like that, if you're spending time in that community, there's a higher chance that you're going to be the person that someone goes, oh, I know who can like fill this slot on this show, because it's exactly the kind of style of music they play, and I know them because they've been hanging around. I don't know, it's pretty simple. Pretty simple math. Be there.